My name is Sister Unity. I am a survivor of childhood sexual assault. When I was 10 years old, at a summer camp that I loved, in the 4th year that I attended in Vermont, the camp owner and director took me to his cabin and molested me. I hate that word, molested. I have the same reaction to it the way people do to the word moist. It's like getting snot on your face. Someone else's snot on your face and you can't remove it. It's horrible. And that's a little bit like the feeling you get after you've been sexually assaulted. I'm 54 years old now. It's 44 years later. And pieces of the puzzle of my own mind and heart are still coming back into place. But there's a lot that can be done. I've done a lot of homework. None of us who have gone through this horrible experience deserve to have this amount of extra homework on our life plate. But damn the perpetrators, that's what we've got. So I want to share with you some of the things from my homework that have helped me enormously. But first, I want to say to any of my brothers, sisters, and others who have been sexually assaulted, and especially who were sexually assaulted in childhood, if you haven't told anyone, speak. Find the right person, someone that you can trust. A therapist, it may be a family member, it may not be a family member. If the sexual assault was incestuous or happened in your family, you may not feel that's a safe place. Many of us have tried to tell our families, and many of us have been bitterly disappointed at the reaction of our families, especially when the perpetrator was a member of our family. So find someone you can trust. If you need to, you can tell me. I will listen. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as Sister Unity, and you can send me a private message. I can't remember if YouTube allows private messages, but if it does, you can send me one there. I will hold your secret and your confidentiality. I won't be able to solve your problems, but I'm hoping to leave you with some resources here that can help. First and foremost, you have to believe in yourself, if you can. One of the most horrible things about sexual assault and childhood sexual assault is that it strips away your sense of your own integrity, the sense that you own your body, that nothing else can come in. Most people who haven't been assaulted like this walk around feeling like they're safe in the world to some extent. There's a kind of tearing down of that innate personal safety wall that happens with us survivors. And it leaves kind of a permanent insecurity. It's hell. It's hell to have this sense of worry, anxiety, looking over your shoulder. A lot of us get PTSD. Excuse me. Yes, I always get the initials wrong. Post-traumatic stress disorder. You don't know if you can trust anyone who falls into any category remotely resembling your perpetrator. My perpetrator looked a little bit like Richard Nixon in Bermuda shorts. It took me a long time to be able to trust men, older men of his generation. I was very nervous and skittish around older men. It took slowly, carefully meeting very genuine, grounded, compassionate older men to show me the difference between the man that did this to me and what men truly can be. Believe enough in yourself. Believe at least that your truth is true, that it is worth speaking. What you experienced happened. You know it happened. Just because it happened, it deserves to be uttered in the world. The world wants truth. A lot of us are in precarious situations where we can't tell our family, we can't come out of like we tell anyone at work, like we tell any one of our neighbors or friends. Think of how they look at us. Even making this video, I had to talk myself into it, because if I reveal this about myself, how would people view Sister Unity? Would they listen to my words, or would they look at me with a constant sense of pity? Oh, she dresses up like that because she's acting out because she was sexually assaulted. Anything from being disbelieved to being pitied to being patronized is not what we're looking for. But even if you're afraid of those things happening, speak your truth. Just because it's true. And because when you speak it, it will free you. Depending on where you speak it, how you speak it, to whom, and what you say, it can absolutely be liberating. I got to speak my truth because my perpetrator worked at a private school that is currently being written about in a newspaper and investigated by a law firm. And so I called up the reporter writing about this school. And I spoke and told him my story. I don't know if it'll ever be published. He gave me no guarantees, and I told him I have no expectations. But I will tell you, speaking the truth of what that man did in that cabin has lifted 44 years of a veil across my brain. I have felt clearer from that phone call 2 weeks ago than I have ever felt in my life. It is worth speaking your truth. You may not get a reporter. You may not get on television. You may not get a lawyer. But here are some ways that you can tell your truth. Like I said, find someone you trust. Someone who will keep your confidentiality. Therapists, part of their licensing is that they keep confidentiality. If you can't afford a therapist with the usual hourly rate, find a clinic that offers psychotherapy. A marriage and family counselor therapist will do fine. It doesn't have to be an expensive psychiatrist. Or find a 12-step program in your area, particularly Incest Survivors Anonymous, IA. You may not have experienced incest per se, but Incest Survivors Anonymous looks at anyone who has survived sexual assault as a child as a power imbalance, and they count it the same, and you're allowed to go. Mine was not a family member, it was not incest, it was a camp director who held a position of authority over me, and that counted, and I went for years. And working their 12 steps helped. And even without working their 12 steps, having a place to speak what happened to me and have other people listen, just listen, was empowering and liberating. It was worth it for me. Incest Survivors Anonymous. If you are using substances, drugs, or drinking, and you haven't already enrolled in a program like Al-Anon or Narcotics Anonymous, NA, you really ought to think about enrolling in them. I don't want to talk about your drinking or drug use or whatever. That's up to you to figure out. But if you are using those substances, that is a classic symptom of those of us who have survived childhood sexual abuse. Classic. We medicate ourselves because what happened was so excruciating, so unreal. It stays with us. The trauma keeps getting triggered by things in our lives. For me, it was older men for many years. For other people, it can be a food, a place, a scent, a color, a piece of clothing. And they medicate with substances. So I suggest going to those programs. Do what you will about the substances, but those programs are confidential, anonymous, and a place where you can speak your truth. Even if you don't speak it in a meeting, even if you just listen to the other people, and maybe you find someone who was medicating themselves because of what happened to them, and maybe you can just sit and talk with them over coffee. Speaking out about what happened to you somewhere that you can trust is the biggest step. Because the perpetrators that did this to us banked on our not talking, on our not being believed. Some of us were told we would be killed. Some of us were told our families would be killed. Some of us were told that we would go to jail for the rest of our lives. They manipulated our young minds and our young fears and anxieties to get us to stay silent. Breaking their spell, their curse, is the big #1 step you can do for your own self. You deserve to be heard because what you lived through is true, is real. It happened to you. And now you deserve to be heard. I believe you. I believe you. There's a couple of books I want to tell you about that are really helpful. You will read about the effects that childhood sexual abuse has on our wiring, on our minds and our hearts. You'll recognize symptoms that you have in your life. For me, reading some of them brought me to tears because I just thought that was me being weird. And I didn't realize that it's what other survivors, a lot of us, end up doing, behaviors we end up having because of what we've lived through. It's a battle scar. It's not a fault. You will also encounter stories of survivors, and ways that survivors got themselves free of these effects of the abuse. You'll encounter methods and strategies for how to do your homework, places you can go, things you can do. There will be some exercises. One of them has a workbook version, and it will give you exercises that you can do to help you to recover repressed memories. If you don't remember what happened to you or all of what happened to you, or places where you can just get it out of your system. Like I said, speaking your truth is important. It'll have little prompts for ways to write down what happened to you. The books are, the big one is, it was originally written for women. It can be used for men, women, people of any gender. It's called The Courage to Heal. The Courage to Heal. The Courage to Heal. I'm just repeating the title. And I'll put a link to it on Amazon, I think it is, in the comment area below. For men, men are also abused in childhood. There's the book Victims No Longer. Again, this book can be used by both, but it is angled towards the specific concerns of men self-image, masculinity, and having survived childhood sexual abuse. I will put the link in the comments below. The Courage to Heal and Victims No Longer. 1 in 5 girls will be, are now, sexually abused as children. 1 in 6 boys will be, are now, sexually abused as children. When I started this journey in the 90s, those statistics were 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 4 boys. The ways that this trauma screws up your wiring, leaves you with repressed anger, sadness, anxiety, terror, loss, feeling like you've been cut free from society and you're floating in some surreal never world, that you're different from the rest of society because you've been made different by someone. I left the cabin of my perpetrator feeling tainted, feeling stained for life. I had just begun at 10 to start having sexual thoughts and feelings, and I left that cabin thinking, oh well, it's over. It will never be good now. It was taken away from me. I've been dyed. I've been initiated into dirty, bad sex. And that shame and guilt, that stain feeling kept with me for years. And I felt, therefore, different from everybody else. I was weird. I was less than. I was used. Who would want me? So I had to go and act out sexually and find ways to have my kind of sex as an other. It is a very common occurrence for people who have survived childhood sexual abuse to act out sexually, to dress and behave in ways that are sexual, and sexuality is great and wonderful, and we should all be as freely sexual as our community allows and as we are comfortable with allowing ourselves. But there is a trait with survivors that sometimes we do engage in questionably appropriate sexual conduct for our own safety and health. Because the boundaries and the definitions around sexuality get completely blurred and messed up by what happened. And it's hard to put it all back together, because what your mama told you isn't what happened to you, so what rules do you go by? It's very complex. Now, every one of us who survived will have our own version of what I'm saying. I am coming from my own perspective. So if you're able to talk and work with someone like a therapist or in a 12-step program, you'll find your reaction to what you went through. And my words, some of them may ring true and some of them may not. Take what I say that's useful for you and use it. And if it's not useful to you, that's okay. You just take what works for you, what's useful to you. You also have to have some compassion for yourself. Give yourself a break. What happened to you was so horrible. It messed up the wiring. It messes up our wiring. So we have to be compassionate with ourselves. We have to be a little bit of a parent to ourselves and say, you know what? I didn't make it to that job interview. I freaked out. You know what? I slept with that person I didn't want to or shouldn't have slept with. I was on some trip. I freaked out. You know what? I just binge drank all weekend, and that wasn't good for me. Let there be enough compassion for yourself to say, yeah, I did do that. I don't like that I did that, but I know why I did that. I know my wiring's a little screwy, so I'm just going to be patient with myself. Let me just hug myself a little. Let me just spend a few hours napping in bed and pamper myself a little. Let me tell myself it's okay to make mistakes. Maybe it's something I'll have to fix, but it's okay for now because I understand what I went through and what I'm going through, and I'm trying to figure this out. Some of us did things later in life that we regret because of what happened to us, directly and indirectly. In the 12-step programs, you address that by doing what they call making an amends. If it's appropriate and you've injured someone, see if maybe you can make an amends. Maybe you write them a letter, or you apologize in person, or you show them somehow that you understand what you did and its effect on them. And if it's appropriate, you can explain why and say you're doing your homework and figuring yourself out. Because part of recovering is taking responsibility not only for what happened to us, but for our reaction to it and our subsequent actions. It's kind of a rule of thumb that most sexual perpetrators, most men and women who molest children, were molested themselves. If this is you, if you have absolutely necessary homework. You have to stop, and you have to stop yourself. Talk to a therapist now. You have attractions and impulses. They just come up and they seem as natural as any sexual impulse is. But it's to someone who doesn't need, want, or deserve your adult sexuality brought into their life. Even if they say they want it, even if they put themselves right under you asking for it, don't. Just don't. They are young and they don't know what it is. Go somewhere, 12-step program, a therapist, a psychologist, someone, and tell them what's going on, and tell them that you are looking for a way to take care of what happened to you so that you do not repeat the pattern with anyone else, with anyone new. Think of what you've gone through. You do not want to pass that on to others. Look at all the drama in world history. I mean, human beings have done some really awful things and dramatic and weird things. You ever wonder why? I mean, there's mental health issues. There are psychopaths and sociopaths. But I cannot help but feel, knowing how the wiring gets mixed up by childhood sexual abuse, that if we could get those stats lowered still from 1 in 5 and 1 in 6 down to 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000,000, or none, how many more clear heads would we have operating our society? If you have not been sexually assaulted and you want to help someone, the best thing you can do is just listen. Don't offer advice, don't try to fix them, just hear them and believe them. Hear us and believe us, and tell us that you believe what we're saying. Don't have to give us a hug. For some of us, that'll freak us out. For others, it'll be nice. You can ask. You can suggest any of the resources I've suggested here: Incest Survivors Anonymous, AA, NA, The Courage to Heal, Victims No Longer. Those stats I cited, there's so many of us out here. You are not alone. And the reason I'm telling you what happened to me is I want you to know that you're not the only one, and that you're not bad. This happened to you, probably because perpetrators pick out children who they somehow intuitively know won't cause trouble and are easy to manipulate. A lot of us who are not aggressive and who are kind or shy get picked on because we are perceived as easy targets. This means no matter what happened to you, you are good. You are good. You are still under there. You're still in there. As corrupt as it may feel, as contaminating as it may feel, as mixed up and crazy as it may feel, you're still in you. At the heart of you, there's a light that cannot ever be extinguished. No matter how dark, crazy, suicidal, depressed, anxious, or freaked out you may feel, the fact is, someone is feeling. There's the feelings, and then there's someone who's aware of those feelings. You are not these feelings. That's an experience you're having. You are you. You are the awareness. And that is a good person. That is a person worth hearing. That is who can speak about what happened to you. Let that person speak. Last recommendation. Some kind of spiritual practice, if you are so inclined, can be very helpful. For me, meditation and chanting. I practice Hinduism. Meditation has been key, giving me a place to feel quiet and calm, where my mind can just unwind, and I can hear from time to time, I can sense that awareness that is different from the feelings, and know that there's a level where I'm just a simple being having this experience, but this is here. I'm here inside, and I'm okay, and I'm good, and I'm now going to have to deal with this. Meditation. Other religious or spiritual disciplines you can try: prayer, writing, journaling, drawing, pictures about what happened to you. Revenge fantasies are great. You don't have to actually carry out the revenge. You get yourself in trouble. But I once had a bad cold, like strep throat bad. And I didn't know what to do. And I called up a friend of mine who was in this 12-step program. And she said, why don't you write a revenge fantasy? I wrote about the guy who did this to me. And there were gorillas with diarrhea. There were chainsaws. There was a swimming pool filled with Portuguese man-o-war with stinging tentacles. There was a lot. I have a good imagination. I wrote it around 10 or 11 at night. I put the pen down. I turned out the light. I went to sleep. The next morning, I woke up honest to God, not trying to be woo-woo metaphysical, it was gone. The cold was gone. The throat pain was gone. I was fine. Now, I've never cured any other colds that way, and I've had a lot of colds and a lot of sore throats. But it did happen this once, and it proved to me the efficacy of letting my truth out, letting my feelings out, in this case, anger, like rage. I let it out by writing. You could write, you could draw a picture, you could dance, you could move, you could shout, you could make poetry. You know what'll work for you. Pick a way to take what's inside and let it be outside, whether it's an emotion, a thought, the experience itself, how you're reacting to the experience, how you'd like to react to it. I didn't feel things. I was numb for a lot of years about it, and then I would just sort of presume, well, if I was angry about this, what would that feel like? And I would write about that. And how would I react? And I would write about that. That's helpful too. Numbing is a big symptom. Big symptom. For years, this is what started me going to therapy. I didn't know I was angry. I had no idea. I didn't know I had anxiety. I had no idea. I would get ready to go out in the world where I had been bitten by this asshole who did this to me. I would dress, get ready to go out to look for a job. A job. That means being around adults, like adult men. I would get sleepy, and I would sit down on my bed, and I would conk out for 7 hours, 5 hours, until it was late afternoon or evening and too late to go look for work, and then I'd wake up. And this happened for like a year or two, until one day, I had started meditating and getting a clearer head. One day I woke up and I was like, oh, that's not normal. Yeah, that's not normal. I called up my cousin who was a therapist, and I said, I think I need a therapist. I've got to take the car into the garage and see what's going on with the tuning and the timing belt. And I've been going to therapy for 24 years. And it has been an amazing journey. It's been like being on the Oprah show every so often. And some days it's just been mundane as spit. But 24 years later, I have somewhere that I can tell my truth, where I can just talk and say what's going on and say what my truth is. To say, I had a fucked up reaction to this thing that happened. I don't know why, but this is what I felt. I hated this. I liked that. I hated that. I don't know why. Oh, it's so good to speak your truth. Freedom is waiting for us to do our homework. If I can make it through that numbness, that unawareness, the veils of delusion I've had, you absolutely can. I'm just a freaking drag nun clown. You are a thinking, feeling human being. Okay, we both are. But what I'm telling you is, you've got a lot inside of you. And you deserve to have your truth spoken. And you deserve to be free from what they did to you. You are good. You deserve good. Let's get this done. There's a lot of resources online. I'll try to put some in the links down in the comments section or in the little notes there. I believe you. I know what you went through. No one should go through that. I'm so sorry it happened to you. There is a way to do the homework. I'll help you if I can.